Hi, everyone. Today I want to talk to you about how to write dialogue in your essay. So, this is a document that's on Google Classroom, and I just wanted to go over it with you because a lot of you have dialogue in your memoirs, and I just wanted to make sure that you had some mentor text in front of you to show you what proper formatting of that dialogue should look like. So, rule number one, use double quotation marks if you indicate that a person is speaking in your writing. So, for example, double quotation means that you have two marks, almost like two apostrophes together, right? That's a double. When I was young, my mother told me, follow your passion and the money will come. Notice in particular this end to this. This is something that I think a lot of people are making an error, not punctuating the end of your quotes correctly. The end mark goes inside the quotation marks. So the end punctuation, whether it be a period, a question mark, an exclamation point, those are end marks and those come inside the end quote mark. Okay? So just pay attention to that, and I'm going to actually highlight that so you remember to do that. Okay? And I'll highlight these so you can see where the quotes are right here. Okay? Rule number two, use single quotation marks around a quote within a quote. So if you take a look at this, what Benjamin Franklin, and this should say meant, oh no, it is mean. What did Benjamin Franklin mean when he said, an investment in knowledge pays the best interest, Miss Jackson asked. So notice it's actually Miss Jackson doing the talking, but she's talking about a quote that was spoken by another individual, in this case, Ben Franklin. And so you can see this is Miss Jackson talking right here. These two quotes show that this is Miss Jackson's speech. And then this single quote, not a double, but a single in here, and I'll make that a different color so you can see it. This shows what words actually came out of Ben Franklin's mouth. Okay. And you can see that in this case, we have some strange punctuation here, right? Again, this punctuation mark comes inside the end quotation, but it comes on the other side of Ben Franklin's. So that might be where some of you are getting confused. If you see this somewhere and you're like, oh, I think the end mark comes after the quote, that is only the case if you are using a quote within a quote, as illustrated here. Rule number three, if a person in your essay has more than a paragraph of dialogue, use the opening quotation marks at the beginning of each paragraph, but use closing quotation marks only at the end of the dialogue. So you can see here, Sarah nodded and said, I think you're right. We can't get very far on this project if we can't work together. But now there's hardly any time left. Do you really think we can get it all done by Friday? And so notice that here we didn't end it because she's still talking. Do you see how that goes? So here's the beginning. This is really confusing, but that's how it is. And this is why kids are often confused here, but it's not your fault. I do think it's confusing. There's no quotation after this together because she's not done talking, but because we put another paragraph, we have to show that it's still a quote. So that's why we put the double quote there again, and then we end her quote with them again there. Now, this only applies because we have this space in between. If we would have put this up here, it would look like that, okay? But because it's another paragraph, we have to add that quote, okay? I know that's confusing, but that's the way it is. All right, so punctuation. There's only a few basic rules you need to know about where to put your punctuation when using dialogue. If the quotation is at the end of the sentence, always put your periods or end marks inside the quotation mark, right? So you can see right here, it's inside this quotation, all right? Rule two, put the question marks and exclamation points inside the quotation marks only if they are part of what the person said. Billy was so ecstatic that he screamed, I passed calculus. And notice this exclamation point comes inside the quote because Billy himself is screaming, okay? All right, so that should give you some idea about punctuation. If the quote is part of a larger question or exclamation, put the punctuation after the quotation marks. This is where you're getting confused, right? Did he just say the bird is the word? So notice that this question is not part of the quote. Notice here, this question mark is actually part of this question. It goes with that question, not with the quote itself. So therefore, it belongs outside of the quotation marks. Confused yet? Oh, it gets more complicated. Let's look at rule number 4. Use commas after said, asked, explained, or other similar verbs if they fall before the quote. So mom always said, comma, don't play ball in the house, period, end quote. But it differs if we have place a comma inside the quotation marks if those verbs come after the quote. Dinner will be ready in 10 minutes, Mrs. Perkins said. So look how confusing this is. If you put your transition before the quote, you have to actually put your punctuation before the quotation. If you are putting your transition after the quote, then your comma goes inside the quotation. Wow, that's kind of mind blowing, isn't it? It's kind of crazy. Rule 6. If a quoted sentence is broken up, put commas after the first part and after the second part. So notice there's a comma inside here, just like we talked about earlier, where that rule shows that it's inside if you have a transition after, and also put one before, just like in rule number 4. So before and after in this situation, and notice this end mark is inside the quote. Proper use of quotation marks and punctuation is not some random thing that you have to learn for no reason. These rules make your sentences easier to read and understand. Without them, your dialogue turns into a headache for your reader because they don't know who is talking when they're done talking or when they start talking. So please try to keep this in mind when you're going through and editing your work. And if you need more practice, you can actually practice trying to do some punctuation on this paragraph here. And don't worry, we're probably going to do this in class. Okay. And here is some instruction of how you can add some quotes to your narrative. Hope that helps, and I'll talk to you soon.